9 o'clock here on Morning Live. The Africa Energy Indaba kicks off in Johannesburg today. The event will really focus on policy and key issues in the energy sector. Organisers say the Indaba is hosted at a very crucial time as many countries on the continent are experiencing the impact of poor energy infrastructure, things such as increased demand and a lack of supply as well. Joining us now is the spokesperson of the event, Nelisiwe Magubane. Says Nelisiwe, good morning to you. Thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you very much.
Now, this is the 10th installment of this Indaba. Let's just talk about policies, really. Looking back, how effective is this Indaba in terms of influencing policies around the energy sector?
Definitely, it's quite important because we get all kinds of people coming from the continent, both in the regulatory environment, but also from the utilities and businesses. So effectively what you have a number of stakeholders who are actually in the energy space. I'm sure you are aware that in the African continent, the availability of energy is pretty poor. So hence, therefore, that's why we need to have this kind of Indaba to be able to share ideas, to be able to come up with new ideas of doing things, opportunities, but also more than anything else, regional integration. How can we make sure that we integrate amongst ourselves?
But looking back at the past 9 years, let's talk about the resolutions that were taken. Are we really moving?
As far as I'm aware, we definitely are moving, because about 5 years ago, it used to be estimated that the access to energy in the continent is about 25% if you remove South Africa, which is sitting at about 90%.
All right, so we're distorting the numbers.
Absolutely. So that's what it was. But now already the statistics indicate that has increased a little. Well, we're still talking about between 30 and 40% access, but the bottom line is we are moving.
Yeah. But of course, as you said, we have our own challenges here in South Africa. But compare us to the other African countries. Where are we?
In terms of the access to energy, we really are advanced. We actually have very few areas now that are a little bit remote, that don't have access to energy. Our challenge is the immigration and also people coming into urban areas. So that creates a pressure on the infrastructure. So you find that while you thought that Gauteng has got almost universal access to energy, you find that actually there are new settlements that are coming up.
Informal settlements.
Exactly. Yeah. And then that creates a lot of pressure on the infrastructure.
Yeah, but as compared to other African countries, we top.
Yeah, of course. Well, yes, absolutely.
And there's a lot of debate, obviously, on South Africa and nuclear energy. What's your take on that? Are we ready for nuclear energy?
My view is that all energy solutions need to be put on the table. We need to look at what is going to be the best for us. Now, let's just take ourselves, for example, when it comes to nuclear energy. We are a water-scarce country, and also our emissions are pretty high. So there is space for nuclear, because nuclear, actually, we do not use we use seawater to cool the reactors, and hence, therefore, we definitely have got to look into that solution. But whether we need it now is a totally different debate altogether.
And we know that, like, during conferences and Indabas such as this, resolutions are taken, and all the experts are there. They come together, minds coming together. Government, is it part of the Indaba?
Oh, yes,
because
absolutely.
they're the policymakers.
Oh, yes. In fact, what actually happened is that the Department of Trade and Industry has sponsored some of the people in the region, from Mozambique, from Angola, and from Zambia, for participating in this Indaba, because the idea is we need to have proper regulatory frameworks so that we can make sure that private sector thrives in that regard.
What's still lacking in terms of the regulatory frameworks?
In the region, most of the time, it's actually not there. If it's there, it's actually not being implemented. So you find that you do have all these brilliant laws. For example, Tanzania has one of the best electricity regulatory frameworks, but of course, the question becomes implementation. Is it appropriately implemented? Because if it's appropriately implemented, then you create certainty for private sector participation.
But how do you go back after the Indaba to actually look at the recommendations and the implementations thereof?
What we do most of the time is that we actually look at feedbacks from the delegates, get a sense of what it is that they would like to see in the future conferences, and then so that we can be able to make sure that we meet those needs.
Mm-hmm. And the program this year and the speakers, who's coming?
Oh yeah, this year we have a representative from the African Development Bank. He's the head of energy, and in fact this is the first time we are actually having him. His name is Mr. Amadou Hot, and he is going to be talking around the issue of integration, because the African Development Bank is very, very keen on making sure that we share solutions, because as I'm sure you are aware, we're beginning to experience climate change. So you find that countries like Zambia that relies on hydropower, in other words, electricity generated from water, are experiencing problems. So since we are a coal-based economy, we can always export that power back to those countries to be able to meet their energy needs. So that's the importance of regional integration.
So integration is the focus of this Indaba.
Yes, yeah. And also, of course, as a company, also we are sponsoring microgrids, in other words, localized energy solutions, because sometimes we find that some of the areas are so remote, it's so difficult to get there. However, people in those spaces still need provision of energy.
All right. So, but how does it work? Do you also bring maybe students in the sector from universities to actually become part of the discussions there?
At this point in time, at the Energy Indaba, we have not done that. However, it's one of the areas that we need to consider. But what is important that we focus on is actually women in energy. And because we are of the view that women not only are just only the users of energy, but also they are the ones who are expected to provide energy in the household. But also over and above that, the sector has been very, very male dominated, and it's time that women actually
are they
take
even
the
interested in the sector? I think that's the question.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
There is a lot of interest in the sector. In fact, yesterday was dedicated to women in energy, and there was quite a number of discussions that were there, and also a lot of networking, and also a lot of business opportunities.
All right, Sis Nelisiwe, let's leave it at that. So the Indaba starts today here in Johannesburg.
That's correct.
Is it open for everyone, or is it?
Well, of course, it is open to everyone. But of course, registration is quite important.
Space is limited.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so we've got already about 500 delegates. Yes.
All right. Thank you so much for coming through, and all the best.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to Nelisiwe Magubane for chatting to us about the Africa Energy Indaba, which kicks off officially today.